We are back. The Solomon Project, where it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep that counts. I'm your host, Richard Burns.
Butter.
Shout out to Hook It Up Homestead. Serving. No, she ain't doing that. Serving as an example for many in, I would say, the limited space that she has. She's showing everybody how she can produce her own food with her garden, with her chickens. She's able to get protein like eggs as the chickens continue to reproduce. That provides meat. She has peppers, she has melons, and for the limited space that she has, she's got some pretty big melons. In any event, what was it, Shakespeare that said this? A rose by any other name would smell as sweet. So whatever makes up a rose, whatever features it has, whatever DNA it has, none of that changes with the change of a name. You can call it anything else. It's still a rose, or whatever name you want to give it, but it's still whatever it is. Whatever biology that thing has, whatever arrangement of cells, it is what it is. Not one of my favorite phrases, it is what it is, but that's the reality. You got another name for it? Well, if you speak another language, you'll refer to it by that language. Does it change the fact that it is genetically what it is, biologically what it is? No, it doesn't change that. It's still that. And if you're talking about that, the name doesn't matter. The name is nothing more than an identifier so that others around you can know what you're talking about. Right here in the United States, if I see a rose and I point to it and I say rose, or if I don't point to it and I'm looking in the direction and it's surrounded by other plants and I say that rose over there, everybody around me is going to understand what I'm saying. I'm looking at a rose. I'm not looking at a weed or a tree or some bush. No, if I say that rose over there, everybody around me will be able to identify what the rose is. If I call it a what? What is that? I have to point to it. So the next time I make that odd noise, which I don't think I can do again, they'll understand what I'm saying and will know that I'm talking about what everybody else knows as a rose. Fine. I bring that up because of what occurred in Jackson Hole. You guys familiar with Jackson Hole, Wyoming? Jackson Hole, Wyoming is where a very important meeting takes place with the Federal Reserve, with members of the Federal Reserve, primarily the Fed chief or the Fed chairman, my boy Jerome Powell. Now, I'm kidding around when I say he's my boy. but I sympathize with his situation. Lots of criticism about even the existence of the Federal Reserve. There's a lot of criticism about that. A lot of negative things being said. You'll hear some economists say negative things. However, they're not in that position. They're not in that position. And that's an extremely stressful place to be, because decisions that you make can have a huge impact on business and with investors. And you're ruffling the feathers of some very powerful people. Now, the Federal Reserve is supposed to be an independent agency. In other words, they're not there to service any one person, any one business. That's not their job. And when that's not your job, and you practice independence, and you do what you're mandated to do, which has to do with price stability and employment. That's your job. That's your mandate. So you got to take a bunch of information and you have to decide how you're going to process that information and make it work so that you do exactly what you're mandated to do, which is price stability and make sure we have full employment, whatever full employment means, because it's probably not what you think full employment is. It's not zero unemployment, if that's what you're thinking. That's not what it is. So, remember in the previous video, I mentioned that Trump was putting pressure on Powell, and to Powell's credit, Powell did not just respond to the pressures from Trump and the administration. He didn't. And you're not supposed to. And don't forget, it was Trump that put Powell in the position to be voted in as the Fed chair. A little bit of history. So Janet Yellen was the Fed chair. And Janet Yellen was appointed by Obama. If you don't know, Trump and Obama don't have the best relationship in the world. And there have been many occasions where Trump acted spitefully and did things just because. Just to keep it real. The assigning of Powell was one of those things. Somewhat. Here's what happened. And I'll get to my point in a second. Here's what happened. So we come out of the pandemic, or the pandemic is happening, whatever the case was. My timeline could be off, but here's the deal. The economy was suddenly running hot. What does that mean? Well, that means that there's a lot of buying going on from the citizens. a lot of extra buying going on because there's some money in their pocket. There's some more money in their pocket. And the economy was starting to run hot, which means that inflation was starting to become an issue. Why would there be inflation? Well, there could be inflation because businesses see that people have the buying power and they can try to increase their profit margins by increasing prices. And they might go little by little, increase it little by little, and people are still buying at the rates that they're buying. So they keep increasing it little by little until you look around and you notice that, whoa, this used to cost X amount before, and now there's like a 10% increase in the amount that it costs. How did that happen? Corporations are reporting better profits, maybe an increase in sale, but definitely better profits. And that could become a problem if that pattern continues, because prices will continue going up. And inflation can become a problem. So what does the Fed do when it gets hot, when the economy gets hot? What does the Fed do? The Fed increases interest rates. Why? It increases interest rates to slow down the desire or the ability to access money, so the demand for goods and services starts to go down a little bit. So now the businesses can't continue raising prices, because every time they raise it now, they're not seeing the increase in the profits in conjunction with the increase in price. Okay, so let's stop it right there. We're not going to increase prices anymore, because apparently we're not getting that increase in profit in proportion to the increase in the cost to the consumer. Okay, so let's stop right there. Okay, good. So now there's a little control with inflation. Control in pricing, in prices. That's one of their mandates. Okay, cool. I'm giving you a really simplistic view. Very simplistic. There are other things that could be going on that can impact pricing of goods and services, and I'm not going to get into that. What I am going to get into is I just gave you a reason why the Fed would increase rates. The Fed would lower rates if they saw the economy going down, having the opposite effect, slowing down. Consumers have less money to spend with, so the Fed would lower interest rates to make it more desirable for the borrowing of money from businesses, from consumers who maybe want to get a mortgage, whatever the case is. Makes money more accessible, puts money back into the pockets of the consumer so that they can go out and spend. So you lower the interest rate. And if you're lowering the interest rates, that's a signal that the economy is slowing down. That would be the complete opposite of claiming that the economy is doing great. So the administration has been saying that the economy is doing great. But then Trump has been kicking, not literally, but he's been body slamming Jerome Powell because he wants him to lower interest rates. He's been asking for that for some time now. Jerome has been saying, listen, I want to see the data first, because right now there are things that you're doing, meaning the trade war, that can impact our rate of inflation. So I'm going to wait on some more information, because I'm not quite sure how this is going to handle it. If I say I'm definitely going to do something, businesses might act on what I say, and it could spell trouble for the consumer. It could. I want to cover my behind, so I'm going to wait to see what happens with certain things so I can get data. Well, Jerome this past Friday made a speech at Jackson Hole, and he's now in agreement with Trump. He's saying that it's looking like we're going to have to lower interest rates. So what does that mean? He mentioned some things that's telling of what that means. The economy is not doing so great. But remember, when you got the President of the United States saying that his country's economy is doing great, and at the same time giving instructions to do something that indicates that it's not doing great, that can cause some confusion amongst investors, amongst businesses throughout the world. So what now? It looks like there's going to be some lowering of interest rates. So now what? Well, like I said, why would you lower interest rates? A rose by any other name would smell as sweet. Excuse me. A sluggish economy by any other name would still be sluggish. Now, it's harder to hide from reality. And the reality is that the economy is not doing that good. What can we do about it? Prepare yourself, like the professor had mentioned so many times. Prepare yourself. I will tell you that if you have a bad memory and you went through the housing crisis of 2008 and you forgot what that was like, and you forgot about the fear and uncertainty that gripped so many people, I'm going to recommend, and this is not financial advice, but I'm going to recommend that you live below your means. What I recommend to my children: save. Learn how to live below your means. Save and invest. Save and invest. That's not going to get through everybody's head. I understand. I'm okay with it. I'm an investor. I profit when people spend. But for those who are close to me, you can spend later on, but create that base, that foundation, so that when you do spend, it doesn't hurt you like it hurts most people. So with that, I'm gonna let Kitty come pick you up. Okay? Stay fresh and keep it profitable. Kitty, come get these people!
Arabam Dacia, seviyorum çift kalem maça. Göremedi kimseden fayda. İşler